Now listen to me well before you go. Are you listening? Right, here's what I know. There's no place like it. There's no parallel. It's the Garden of Eden. It's the pits of hell. Keep your boots lashed up and your eyes on the road. If it doesn't talk back to you, leave it alone. If it bites you, don't move. If it roars at you, run. And for God's sake, you're Irish, stay out of the sun. So one last thing, and let that be the end of it. Remember, Australia is no place to be an idiot.
Welcome back to An Ordinary World. If you're new here, my name is Ferdia. You're joining me about 250 kilometres west of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Yes, I've ended up here somehow. So I've rented a little motorbike, bought some camping gear, rode here yesterday over the Blue Mountains and pitched up here in this gorgeous spot of land and fell asleep to the sound of cockatoos and kangaroos, which is exactly as I imagined Australia to be. Southbound. I've got 6 days-ish to get down to Melbourne via the scenic route as far as this little thing will take me. Fingers crossed, and yeah, let's see what happens. that's really it, there's no other plan. Let's see what happens. First though, coffee, that is essential.
I've always maintained that any wheels are better than no wheels, and it's this mentality which has led me to rent the only bike I could get my hands on in Sydney, what should be a perfectly good 125. But setting out into the second day of riding said 125, two things are starting to dawn on me. The first is just how big Australia actually is, and the second, well, maybe this 125 isn't as perfect as it should be. Let's just flash back a second to Sydney.
Now here she is. It's a Honda CB125E, a little 125. Let me tell you, I'm not feeling so confident. She's not in great shape, but this was it. This was the only option I had. The tyres are nearly bald, not so much on the sides because the bike's obviously never been ridden anything other than as a delivery bike. Rear tyre, there's no thread left at all. I'm doing this on my phone because I didn't bring my cameras with me. Look, there's no thread there at all. Chain and sprockets are severely worn. A little bit concerned. I've managed to get it up to nearly 60 and that's it. It doesn't even have the power to do fifth gear under its own steam. Just doesn't have the beans. Anyway, here we go.
Santa Arrival Parade on the 30th of November. This is the town of Orange. It's very nice. I think this is the last big town you hit for the interior. I think. I'm not sure, but it would appear that way on the map anyway. The architecture is mad. It's so cool. It's not like anything I've ever seen before. Very pretty. That was Orange. Now, whatever lies beyond. Wah!
What lies beyond is hundreds upon hundreds of miles of farmland. Pastures so vast that the borders of some of them stretch far beyond the horizon. There's a whole country of this between me and the big red I'm so desperate to see, but I don't know that. And so, happy in my ignorance, I point my front wheel west and just start riding. Very, very slowly. It takes a certain naive optimism to drive a decrepit 125 into the Australian bush. Of course, everyone knows Australia is big in theory, but it's a hard thing to wrap your head around when you look at it on a map and your mind is simply incapable of conceptualizing the vast distances in reality. However, I'm still happy pottering around with no real sense of urgency, and the beautiful thing about having no plan is that sometimes you can just happen upon something amazing that's only made even more amazing by the fact that you just happened upon it. This is the Parkes radio telescope, which is something of a big deal in Australia apparently, but I had no idea. Turns out it's from here that the vast majority of the footage from the Apollo 11 moonwalk was broadcast back to Earth and into the history books.
Well, shit.
Oh, it's never a good sign to see a biker waiting for a bus. Anyway, I found a garage, the fourth garage that I went to. We're able to take the bike in. They said though it'll be late afternoon by the time it's done. The first garage I went to wouldn't touch road bikes. Second one, the mechanic wasn't in. Third one, the mechanic was in, but he was too busy. And the fourth one, the mechanic was in. He was busy, but they were going to squeeze me in the afternoon. So I've got the day in Dubbo. I'm going to become a lot more familiar with Dubbo than I ever intended, but could be worse. Could be so much worse. So I'm going to take the bus into town and explore around a bit. You know, it was one of the things I was thinking about all the time was the potential of getting a flat. And because it's tubed tyres, it wasn't really an option to just buy a plug kit or a compressor anyway. And you know, with the tube tyre carrying an extra tube, carrying the levers, carrying the compressor, it was just all too much stuff to put on the bike and stuff that I'd have to buy straight out. So I decided to take the gamble because I've never gotten a flat on any of my trips before. And I actually went to bed last night thinking about it. What if I ride into the Outback and get a flat and there's nowhere I can get it fixed? Because I'm riding so much in the hard shoulder because of the 50 kilometers an hour. Anyway, it's good that it happened now, if it had to happen. I had a look at the weather there. It's set to change, unfortunately, storms. So we'll see what time they finish up today, and then we'll make a decision. But with this losing a day of riding on what was meant to be the make or break day, with the weather looking to change, it's killing me. But it looks more like I'm gonna have to forego the Outback. Anyway, let's get a coffee. All done and dusted. So that cost me 150 Australian dollars, which is about 90 quid. Anyway, it is what it is. And the guys also confirmed that which I already knew, which is this bike's a piece of shit. So the sprockets are essentially on the last legs. The chain is barely hanging in there, which I knew, but it's hearing them say it, you know, it's one thing to say it to yourself and say, it'd be grand, but when you're told it, it just adds another layer to it. So that, combined with the fact that I can't actually afford anything else to go wrong with this bike, means I've decided to abandon my westward venture and head south. Because as much as I'm one for winging it and not planning, that is always done on the reassurance that I'm prepared enough, or I feel prepared enough to deal with any problems that will arise. And right now, probably for the first time, I actually don't feel prepared. Oh well, let's keep going. I got myself a milkshake to make myself feel better. are impressive, those land trains. Very, very impressive. You can get them to some speed. I'm telling you, riding a 125 is making me view trucks very differently. Before they used to be a frustrating inconvenience to be overtaken, and now they approach like impending death in the rearview mirror. They travel at some speed. My goodness. Stop my lips drying out.
People come from all over the world to see the Australian outback. But nobody comes to see this. Rural Australia. I've traded the big red for an endless sea of dusty brown. And whilst I'm sure the people who live here lead connected, vibrant lives, I don't see them. To an outsider, it seems forgotten, depressed, and forlorn. Combined with the grey skies, it's creating an ambience of inescapable melancholy. And I feel like I'm the only soul riding through all of this. It's like being trapped in an abandoned movie set or a black and white photo. And whilst I'm not going to get to see the outback that people come from all over the world to see, I'm getting to see this, something that nobody would have any real reason to see. It's the landscape that no doubt passes unnoticed through car windows, a thing bland and uninteresting, but when you stop or slow down, as I don't have any option but to, you start to see things. Traces of life of the unseen inhabitants, and a glimpse into the golden days, the glory days, a nearly forgotten time that, for those who do remember it, no doubt remember it as being always sunny.
I am not prepared nor equipped. Henceforth to be known as prepared to ride in the rain. I have no rain gear.
And the limits of the waterproofing of this tent. Not very much at all. Oh, this is bad, man. This is bad. I'm hoping there's a break. It can't keep going all the time. I just need a break to get out, pack up the bike. And then I need to try and find a place to stay tonight, because it's not just me getting wet, it's all the gear, camping gear. And when that gets wet, forget it. You just can't sleep in a wet tent on a wet mattress in a wet sleeping bag. It's just, don't do it. You'll be sick the next day and then you're miserable long term, so. This is unfortunate for sure.
Isn't it dark in here? And there's no one you can tell. The day is full of fractals and the night hurts like hell. You can't be free. On and on you feel a woman breathe. And everywhere you want to go, you feel her pulling at your sleeve. It's not meant to be easy. Even the world creeps through. These dreams you keep having, she creeps through them too. It's not meant to be easy. I wrote that when I was 17 and self-interested and self-important, but the older I get, the less convinced I am that I'm any smarter or wiser than I was then. Now I'm just a little less compromising about what I want and what makes me happy. What I hope I can look back on if I'm lucky enough to get old and say, yeah, that was a time well spent, because even though it's not always easy, I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm hungry. Right now, there's no place I'd rather be. Slipping through the suburbs of yet another forgotten town. Grey, pathetic in its pride as a has-been or once was. It seems all the colonial birds are coming home to roost. And what could be a very pretty street with its Victorian buildings and beautiful iron balconies is instead self-sabotaged by neglect and tackiness, as if ashamed of its once dignified past. And I am loving it. And I'm happy for the grey and the cold that is framing this place in this way. Nevertheless, after a sausage roll and a cup of coffee, I feel like a hot shower and a comfortable bed.
I think we're losing air. I don't believe it. Oh, man. I just filled it up because it was down to 10 PSI this morning. God damn it. What are the chances I get 2 punctures in 2 days? Anyway, we'll keep going to the next town. It's 30 kilometers and check again there. Well then, here I am in a motel. It's costing me $100, which is about 60 something euros. A bit pricey, but it was the nearest one that I could find that was somewhat affordable. Doing the maths, I've been in the tent 4 nighs, and this is night 5, so if I was to split the $60 over the last 5 nights, it's about 60 euros over the last 5 nights. It works out about 10 euro. And look, it's a motel. This is an experience in itself. It's like being in a Tarantino movie, minus the katanas and the decapitations. But we don't have motels in Ireland, and they're very rare in Europe. They're not something you usually see. It's like a motel where you drive up to the door and you put. Anyway, Americans are probably going, it's a big deal. Anyway, for me, it seems like something out of Americana culture. It's an experience in itself, and it's drying my stuff, it's clean, and there's electricity. I can charge all my stuff and get a few hours rest, because I feel I could keep going, even though I've been riding pretty full out. But I often get into situations where I feel I'm fine, and I keep going, and then I just crash. I mean, energy crash, because I don't realise how tired I get. So it's good to stop ahead of that happening. Update on the bike, we've done over 1,000 kilometers now. I'm going to keep the tank about half full from now on, because I realise that I can get up to 70 kilometers an hour cruising speed if I don't fill up the tank all the way. I'm really impressed at the mileage I'm getting out of that tank. I filled up technically 3 times, but one of those times was when I was looking at the fuel gauge and looking at how far I'd done. I was saying to myself, that fuel gauge is broken, that can't be right. So I stopped at a petrol station to fill it up, and it only topped up with 6 litres. I just couldn't believe the economy that I was getting out of it, and I suppose that's what it stands for. It's a 125E, E for economy, and they got that bit right for sure. What is it, 14 litre tank? I filled up twice and a bit in 1,000 kilometers, so that's impressive. And petrol's pretty cheap here compared to Europe, so that's also another good thing. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now and have a shower. Oh yeah. Right, we shall continue tomorrow.
Tomorrow brings the sun, so with half a tank of gas and a slowly deflating rear tyre, it's time to hit the road. It's hour after hour of endless blue skies and golden wheat. I suppose it would get boring, but for me, it's still a novelty. I'm used to a village every 10 kilometers or so, each with its own hilltop castle. I'm used to a landscape that changes every 100 kilometers. a language every 200, and a whole new country every 300. I've never ridden anywhere before that I've gone an hour without seeing a single person. I've never ridden 6 days in one direction while staying in one country. In fact, I don't think that's even possible in Eurasia. But that's Australia, and I am anything but bored.
You see a vertebrae going all the way down, but I don't know what it is. Is it the tail of a kangaroo? I don't know. Looks kind of scaly. Well, it might be a snake. Do you know, I've been here for about 4 weeks now. I haven't seen a single snake. Everyone was saying, oh, be careful of the snakes in Australia. I'm starting to think there's no snakes in Australia at all. It's just something they've created to stop people coming here. Sounds of the birds are amazing. They're so different to what I'm used to. But one thing they don't tell you is the amount of flies everywhere. You stop anywhere and within 30 seconds you are swarmed by flies. And they are persistent, really persistent.
The miles tick by, I stop only to put air in the rear tire. Other than that, I just keep going. And ever so slightly, I can start to feel the landscape changing just a little bit as we edge ever closer to the New South Wales-Victoria border. I flew into Brisbane about 3 weeks ago, and that's when it instantly struck me. On the one hand, I felt like I was in a foreign country. The subtropical Queensland climate, the nature, the landscape, this was all alien to me. But when I walked down the street, I was surrounded by English. I was in an Anglo culture, and more than that, everywhere were Irish accents. Limerick, Galway, Dublin, it was this jarring juxtaposition between the environment and the culture I found myself in. And honestly, I didn't like it. I've been desperate to get out of the cities. Because cities are cities the world over. They're little bubbles we create to protect ourselves from this. The environment we should be existing within, but which we are desperate to remove ourselves from. Partly out of fear, partly out of comfort. But mostly, I think, it's because we've deluded ourselves that we are above it. That somehow our specific manifestation of life in the form of Homo sapiens is separate from all the other iterations of life on this planet. But we're fooling ourselves. Our cities are fragile conceptions. Our society, no matter how sophisticated or technologically adept we are, is still reliant on the very basics which we derive from nature. Nowhere is this more evident than Australia. It's a country that's heavily reliant on the extraction of natural resources. And it's a country so diverse, so vibrant in life, where the natural beauty of the places that haven't been ravaged by human activity are so overwhelmingly beautiful that I found myself at certain times moved to tears. Finally, after 6 days of riding through dust, we get this. The magnificent eucalypt forests north of Melbourne. Green, wet, and alive. But they're green and wet for a reason.
Right.